morning, and thank you for joining us for this important announcement on inclusive growth. I am Angela Smith-Jones, Deputy Mayor of Economic Development and a member of the Inclusive Growth Working Committee that includes representatives from civic, nonprofit, and philanthropic organizations, many of whom have joined us here today. Today's announcement marks a pivotal step in how we use economic development incentive programs to reach the types of inclusive outcomes we seek as a community. Mayor Joe Hogsett has been a fervent supporter of inclusive growth in our neighborhoods across Indianapolis throughout his tenure. And I'd like to welcome him to the podium to address this important topic. Please welcome Mayor Joe Hogsett.
Well, good morning. Good morning. And thank you all for joining us here at Ivy Tech for this important announcement. It should come as no surprise that we have a lot to celebrate in the last several years in Indianapolis. Significant job growth, especially in the tech sector, revitalized neighborhoods, and our downtown is a premier venue for sports and convention-related activities. Indiana Black Expo this week, the National Urban League, soon to come Gen Con, and I won't see Thomas Cook for several days. But the truth is also, not everyone in our community is benefiting from this growth. That's the truth. From 2000 to 2015, over that 15-year period, there was an 80% increase in the number of residents of our city living in poverty. In 15 years, 80% increase. In 2016, 1/3 of children in Indianapolis were born into homes that operate at or below the federal poverty line. This isn't happening in some other city, to some other people. This is our city, and these are our neighbors. We must not celebrate limited prosperity. Indianapolis cannot be two cities, divided by all too familiar lines of race and class. And that is why I'm so pleased to be here today. The roadmap for inclusive economic growth revealed today repositions incentive programs to advance a more equitable economy, a more inclusive economy. One that looks less like the past and more like our future. That inclusivity is upheld by 4 pillars: business growth, physical investment, skills development, and support systems. Those 4 pillars will address key priorities like ongoing racial disparity, incentivizing responsible, holistic development, and broadening access to quality education like the education right here at Ivy Tech. Ivy Tech has been a key partner in this program, as well as in the past educational initiatives like Indy Achieves. Thank you, Kathy, and Ivy Tech. Today's announcement focuses on incentive programs. We can channel incentives to help produce desired outcomes. I want to thank Develop Indy. I want to thank the Indy Chamber. I certainly want to thank LISC Indianapolis. I also want to thank all of the many partners and many stakeholders that are with us today and some who are not, who have been very relevant in the creation of these notions and ideas. True prosperity in Indianapolis must exclude no one. This new roadmap brings jobs to people, and it brings people to those jobs. It works to remove barriers to the middle class for those who currently find themselves economically disadvantaged or living in poverty. As we embark on our city's bicentennial celebration just next year, it is imperative that upward mobility be a reality for all of our community. Access to good paying jobs, I believe, will be our legacy for our third century as a city. And I can't think of a better way to celebrate that third century by looking back on the first 200 years and where we will be going over the next 100. I thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Hogsett. This work could not have been done without strong partner relationships, and the Indy Chamber has been a leader in conversations on inclusive growth for the last several years. Please join me in welcoming the President and CEO of the Indy Chamber, Michael Huber.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Hogsett, and all of our partners who are here today. This is a really exciting announcement. It's a great thing for our city. It is something that many of us in this room have been working on now for a few years. And anything we do in Indianapolis that has a large impact is always done as a coalition. It's always a team sport. And I want to acknowledge a few of the different partners and organizations that have made today possible. The team at United Way, I know Greg Fennig, Sarah Vance Lambrook, and your entire organization, thank you so much for your support. Employee Indy and Angie Carr-Klitsch, Central Indiana Corporate Partnership, David Johnson, Central Indiana Community Foundation, Brian Payne, Flanner House, the IU Public Policy Institute, various CDCs, IFF, PACE, the Indianapolis Urban League, who hosts its national conference here in Indianapolis this week, and our host, Ivy Tech. And there are others, but I want to acknowledge all of those organizations that have made significant contributions to this proposal and this announcement. The mission of the Indy Chamber is to empower businesses to assure that all people have the opportunity to succeed in the Indianapolis region. And this reveal today is really, really important. As many of you know, the Indy Chamber was fortunate to get into a cohort, a project in 2017 with our counterparts in Nashville, Tennessee, and in San Diego, California. And it was a project that Brookings Institution called the Inclusive Economic Growth Lab. And Brookings was trying to solve this complex equation, saying, why in American cities right now do you have certain parts of the economy that are growing very fast, but then in American cities, and Indianapolis is no exception, you also have growth in poverty. It's something that is really alarming, I know, to all of us in this room. It's something that's a growing challenge. And among the different tools that cities and regions have to move the needle on growing poverty rates in cities are actual tax incentives and business incentives. Incentives obviously have received a lot of press here, especially in the last couple of years, and our Indy Chamber organizational policy towards incentives is they're a tool, they can be used and they can be abused. We've gone through a very eye-opening experience with respect to incentives in the last year with all the organizations and others whom I mentioned before in trying to figure out how can you use incentives and to engage in a more meaningful conversation with the business, because let's be honest, you have the business's full attention when you're discussing incentives and their growth in your city. It's a moment that you don't always get, but if we are able to present the business who's requesting incentives with a network and a structure by which they can participate in helping us address these gaps, these equity gaps, issues of limited self-sufficiency and economic mobility, as the mayor mentioned, that's an opportunity that we just cannot go to waste. And we believe that there is a way that we can implement this policy and make it work for business and support business growth, and also get the business to participate in a more meaningful way with all of us to help close these gaps within our community. So we could not be happier to be a part of this partnership with Mayor Hogsett and all of our organizations who are here today. And I also want to thank City County Council President Bob Osley for being here today. We are very excited to roll this policy out. We think we're going to learn a lot, and for those of all of our organizations who are working on this, it is going to be a powerful tool in addressing these gaps that exist within our city. So thanks again to the mayor, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for the contributions of the Indy Chamber. Michael did mention the Chamber's mission to empower business to assure that the opportunity to succeed in our city applies to all. And we'd like to bring one of those businesses forward to discuss the potential impact of this work. We are joined today by Tracy Cote. We practiced her name earlier. She is the Chief People Officer for Genesis and one of Indy's major employers and community supporters. Tracy is responsible for all global programs designed to support and enhance the people experience at Genesis, including employee engagement, compensation, learning and development, employee relations, community, talent acquisition, and employment branding. She's the only one who works. Like, that's everything. Tracy has held several leadership positions in human resources throughout her career, and we are honored that she can join us today. Please welcome Chief People Officer of Genesis, Tracy Cote.
Well, thank you for that fantastic introduction. It sounds very impressive. I run HR, that's what I do. So anyway, thank you for having me here today. I'm so delighted to be here. And I want to echo the thanks that the others have given to Mayor Hogsett, the entire team with the city for this initiative, as well as to Michael and his staff at the Indy Chamber. Just fantastic for this announcement. And I don't want to forget our hosts. Doran Moreland, so I'm practiced the name too, and I'm not sure I got it quite right, for hosting us. So thanks so much for that. I appreciate it. So our office at Genesis here in Indianapolis, little known fact, it is the largest office in our entire company. We have over 820 people based here in Indy, and that represents 30% of our entire North American workforce. And it represents 15% of our global workforce. So it's an important location for our company. In this office, we have all business functions represented. Everything from our research and development team, product engineering, a cloud operations group, and all the G&A functions. So HR, I have a huge team here, finance, IT. A lot of potential here, amazing talent. Over the past 25 years, we've been in this site. And it's always been a real hotbed of innovation. Wherever they live in our global company, we have people sitting in over 50 countries. We want our employees, our partners, our customers, everyone we work with to feel safe and empowered in their community. That's why we are very proud to support this initiative. And there might be tax incentives, I actually don't even know, I don't pay attention to that. It's the right thing to do. It will foster a more inclusive Indianapolis for everyone, and that's a place where we want to do business. This program is fully in alignment with who we are as a company philosophically, and it sets the standard for how we want to continue to grow our workforce. We recently took a look at our own diversity and inclusion initiatives in the company and decided, we can do better, just like everyone can, as diverse as we are. This is the kind of program we want to engage in to continue that path. We recognize that having a diverse workforce is a critical component of a thriving community, and it's also important for our success on the global stage. This is why we've invested over $50,000 in Project Indy, which is the Mayor's Youth Employment Initiative. This provides the foundation for the next generation's workforce needs. In addition, Todd Peterson, who's in the audience here, one of our local leaders, chairs the Develop Indy Council, which is the advisory board that presides over the economic development activities for the city. We're also key supporters of various local organizations, including the Indy Chamber, where we have invested in your Accelerate Indy program for regional development. And we also support Powder Keg, which is a talent connector, bringing together over 15,000 members of the local tech community. These organizations encourage the best and the brightest talent to come to Indianapolis and to stay. So of course, from a recruiting perspective, attracting talent is important for me, but we also recognize the need to support initiatives like this one that are focused on retention and development of people who are already here in this community and who are looking for opportunities to climb the economic ladder. The next wave of growth for this community will be powered by job access, healthcare, training, childcare, and I noticed a lot of work on the roads out there getting done, so helping people get to all those jobs, and really the opportunity for all workers and their families to thrive. So I want to thank you again for inviting me today and for including our company, Genesis, in this important announcement, which will make the community and the workforce stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Several speakers have outlined the importance of partnerships in achieving inclusive outcomes. We're hosted by one of our partners here today at Ivy Tech, helping drive skills development and training for changing workforce needs. Please join me in welcoming Ivy Tech's Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging, Doran Moreland.
Deputy Mayor Smith-Jones, thank you so much for the introduction. Mayor Hogsett, Michael Huber, and Indy Chamber staff. Tracy, thanks for the business testimonial. It's really important. My name is Doran Moreland. It's my absolute pleasure and honor to represent both the Indy Chamber and the Inclusive Growth Working Group and my employer, Ivy Tech Community College. And it's really fitting that I'm representing both simultaneously because our principles are in complete alignment. At Ivy Tech, our focus is providing world-class, affordable, and accessible education. And we really believe in the transformative power of every single student that comes through our doors. We are really in the middle of interesting times from an employment standpoint, as Mayor Hogsett laid out earlier. It's a great time to live in Indiana from an employment standpoint. The last time I looked at Bureau of Labor Statistic data, our unemployment rate is about 3.5%. That actually puts us in the top tier of all states in the Midwest. Only Minneapolis and Wisconsin can boast unemployment rates that are at or lower than ours. 3.5%. However, when you look at the unemployment rate for African Americans in Indiana, it's 9.1%. That's a 3-to-1 ratio. It doesn't have to be that way. So what we've been doing at Ivy Tech is, knowing this, we've been putting increased focus on equity, educational equity, employee equity, and this is represented through a new pillar of our strategic plan, which is truly the North Star for our institution. It guides us on our day-to-day work. We are looking at what we can be doing to fill the pipeline with diverse talent. We're gently nudging students, minority students, first-generation students, into high-growth, high-demand fields: advanced manufacturing, logistics, cybersecurity, robotics. And so we're doing our part in creating a pipeline for talent. And now with the inclusive growth strategy that Mayor Hogsett's been putting forth, it gives us an additional amount of leverage to bring the employers to the table. And so together, we can start making some meaningful strides in providing an equitable workplace. As a lifelong Hoosier and an Indianapolis resident, I'm so proud to see us taking steps in this direction. So again, thank you for the opportunity to represent both Ivy Tech Community College and the Indy Chamber. Let's get to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Doran, and thank you again, Ivy Tech, for hosting us this morning. Our final speaker is Mr. Ian Nicolini, Vice President of Indianapolis Economic Development for the Indy Chamber and Head of Develop Indy, the economic development arm for the city of Indianapolis. But before Ian speaks, I'd like to talk a little specifics on the strategies, policy, and recommendations. So let me just set the stage. Throughout this process, this has informed us that inclusive incentive strategy, workforce needs, inclusive outcomes were outlined as the driving force for the policies that we are recommending today under the mayor's leadership. These recommendations are anchored by 3 priorities. 1, support workforce training programs as a key component and opportunity to address Indy's persistent challenges around a constrained labor market and existing skills gap. 2, encourage investment in job creation in distressed and underserved geographies. And then 3, address several persistent barriers to the ability for residents to find and keep employment, particularly for low-income residents. These include childcare, transportation, and more. To address the specifics of these policy recommendations, please welcome Ian Nicolini.
Thanks for setting the stage, Deputy Mayor, Mayor Hogsett, President Osley. Thank you for your leadership and guidance through this process. You know, the policy recommendations we're setting forth today reflect conversations with what seems like everyone in this room and then a cast of thousands of others. And so I want to thank all of you for your participation, for your engagement, for all of the work that we've put in over the last year. All of those conversations with stakeholders across and around our city, as well as the analysis of best practices from other markets, has guided us to these recommendations. Let me start with a conversation about tax abatements, sort of the bread and butter tax incentive offered to businesses. It offsets tax obligations for economic development investments that create and support jobs. Yet, there's no explicit mention in our tax abatement policies about inclusive outcomes. We're changing that today with this strategy. The recommendations include incentivizing jobs that will provide a family-sustaining wage, jobs that include healthcare benefits, that demonstrate a positive ROI to the city and its stakeholders, and that employers will participate in impactful actions within the community. And this is what we're really excited about. I'll talk about that more in a minute. The recommendations in this policy call for dedicated workforce support funds, leveraging the award of incentives to support workforce for companies like Genesis to be able to attract and retain talent, but also to remove the barriers that prevent workers oftentimes from accessing jobs, things like childcare, transit, and training. Finally, we're recommending modifications to the way that the city scores tax abatements to focus on new parameters or adjusting existing parameters. Things like encouraging local hiring, or women, minority, veteran-owned business participation, business entity status, the location of companies, and then putting slightly less focus on parameters that oftentimes aren't seen in small and medium enterprises. Things like the number of retained employees. We love our 800 employers, don't get me wrong. But look, 20% of our job growth, or 80% of our job growth comes from 20% of our smallest companies. And if you're focused on things like capital investment or retained jobs, you may not qualify if you're a small employer or you're a startup. Second, let's talk about the training grant programs. This is a really insightful and useful program that the city has been able to leverage to build the next generation of workforce and then inform the data needs of our workforce partners like Employ Indy and Ascend Indiana. You know, it's currently somewhat difficult to navigate, partly because it's a new program, but we've indicated some best practices and ways to strengthen that application process, and that's going to lead to, I think, a much more user-friendly experience, but that's going to help get the capital into the hands of entrepreneurs and trainees just so that we can start filling these important jobs. Doran's point about the state of our workforce is correct, and yet our companies still need to be able to grow, and that requires we have a pipeline of really talented people flowing into it. It also includes an hourly wage requirement of $18 an hour. Think of this as a wage floor. The way that we would, normally a training grant might be for higher wage jobs, and yet a sub-baccalaureate opportunity to make $18 an hour and have benefits, research from our partners at CIC, the Central Indiana Corporate Partnership, and Brookings have shown, that gets about 3/4 of workers out of struggling status. That's an important number. And if we're leveraging our incentives to create those types of opportunities, then we're building out the kind of workforce that we can sustain and that our companies can retain. Third, the city has done a remarkable job with its land assets in the last year, building out an inventory of available land. The DMD has led a process to put together all of these commercial industrial sites that can be redeveloped. This is great leverage. These are assets that we can put into play that are close to workforce, that are in areas that we should be focusing on and can become the next generation of job generators. Foresightful actions like expanding the scope of Renew Indianapolis to focus on commercial industrial land banking. And then the emerging opportunity zones work. I think we've had 12 meetings about opportunity zones this week alone. There's so much momentum around this program that this city can seize upon because we have a business community that's hands-on, we've got higher education partners, we have the kind of political leadership that it takes to get this done. Lastly, and I think most ambitiously, this report calls for the creation of a community impact network. So many of these partners in the room, so many mentioned throughout the report, all provide vital services to those strategic pillars that the mayor mentioned at the start of today's event. Our economic development projects is a pipeline into those services. It benefits employees, it benefits employers, it benefits the communities, and it benefits neighborhoods. We have to leverage these relationships and also build a system. The idea being you could apply for a project, apply for incentives for your project, and we're going to plug you into this network of really engaged people, the kind of people that put together such a visionary document. We're going to be working with partners to develop comprehensive list metrics, how we're going to measure this. We're going to spend the next 4 months operationalizing this. So on January 1st, 2020, the start of the 3rd century, sir, will be one of inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian, for walking us through the details. The full strategy to which we've been referring this morning can be downloaded if you go to the city website, which is www.indy.gov. This is concluding our press conference. The speakers will be available for a few moments afterwards for one-on-one questions and comments. Thank you so much for joining us for this important announcement, and have a fantastic day.